appreciate having you, Steve. So, and
Huh? Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Cormac's about to call in, and he's on his way, but about to call in, just so we can get started. And texting Anna Christina now.
How is your all's day been?
I didn't say Happy New Year's Eve. It was great.
Thanks.
Same here.
I feel like I've been running ragged all day.
Just take a moment.
Today's a big day.
What's up?
Today was my last day. You know. No.
That's a huge day.
Huge day.
And celebrating is coming.
Well, in order to talk about anything that's on the meeting, to adhere to compliance with what other boards do and with open meeting laws, we need to make sure that we have a quorum present. And so we're just lacking one person for a quorum. So I think if people haven't had opportunity to read the minutes or the agenda, it would be an appropriate time to do that sort of thing. But I think we need to wait until we have a quorum present before starting. It's an actual requirement. It's what other boards do, and we need to align ourselves with what other boards do. What I'm saying is, it is a requirement for boards to have a quorum before presenting or before taking up business. Yes.
Is there anything we can talk about that's not on the agenda?
I think it would be better to just wait for AC. You've tried to reach out to her, yes? Yeah, so I think it's probably just going to be another few minutes. I think it would be better served to wait for a quorum present.
It's the summertime. It is. Endemic of the season that we struggle with a quorum. It's been that way for the past 16 years. I don't expect it to change anytime soon.
I actually did. I borrowed a bike share bike from the university, and this is like my last bike share to here to back to the shop, and then I'm done. I'm fine. I'm still living in Lowell, and I'm still psyched on bikes. That's unclear. It'll be fine.
Call the meeting to order, and let's review the minutes. And does anyone, let's take 30 seconds. If anyone needs more time than that to review the minutes, we've kind of been sitting here for a little bit, so I'll allow, we'll have like a minute if anyone needs to make an adjustment. They all look good to me. Very detailed minutes. Who does these minutes? Is it you, Cynthia? Wow. This is, wait. All right, whenever someone wants to make a motion to accept these, we will love that.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, there we go.
You can second it.
Or I can second it.
All right, Cormac makes the motion and AC seconds. All voting, what do you say? All voting.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Aye.
Awesome, we got a vote of 4.
Thank you for your thorough minutes.
Thank you, yes. Okay, moving on. Can I just take one thing out of order, since it's gonna be quick? It's a suggestion to put LRTA and electric buses on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think that that's something that doesn't need to be discussed this meeting, but I think it's something as you create the agenda for the next meeting, it can be noted as,
All right.
as something to do. But since it wasn't on the agenda, it probably isn't appropriate to discuss at this meeting.
No discussion, just a heads up. That's what we're gonna talk about next month, one of the things. All right, let's go on with the Lowell Forward Master Plan with Catherine.
All right, so I know that we had the Lowell Forward Master Plan as part of the agenda from previous months, and so this is just an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into it. You can access this on the city's website. You can just type in Lowell Forward Master Plan. It's very extensive. I'm just going to focus in on the part that has to do with energy, climate, and the environment. The master planning effort was a very extensive public outreach effort. I know that there were hundreds of comments. There were multiple meetings, multiple places where people could add input. I know they had focus groups. I know there were members of the Sustainability Council on those focus groups. And from those efforts came these overarching goals. So the overarching goals for energy, climate, and the environment are to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, increase building resilience, promote the clean energy economy, and ensure energy equity. And as part of this, there are sort of different timelines attached to things, whether things are new existing programs, whether they expand on things. And we're not going to go into that level of detail, but we do have some established indicators of progress towards these goals. Things like reducing carbon emissions from buildings citywide by 50% versus 1990 baseline levels by 2030, by 75% by 2040. increasing publicly available EV charging infrastructure by 50% versus FY23 baseline, increasing installed solar infrastructure by 50% versus FY23 baseline, and increasing the number of households utilizing decarbonized energy sources. I'm going to go through these things as fast as I can, but because there is so much information, what I would just request is, while I'm going through the information, if you have questions, write them down, and then I'm happy to answer anything afterwards. So as
I'm
we,
gonna let you go through everything.
Yes.
Sorry, I know I'm interrupting. while you're talking. But I'm just clarifying. I'm
Yes.
just gonna make sure you go through everything,
I'm-
and everybody save your questions till the end.
perfect.
I won't say anything else.
All right. Goal 1, achieving carbon neutrality. There are different actions associated with this, including creating and implementing a climate action and resilience plan for Lowell, building capacity within the sustainability department, creating an emissions reduction toolbox for use by residents, small businesses, and larger commercial properties to help connect them with resources, reviewing current permitting and review processes to ensure they align with emissions reduction goals, exploring and adopting zoning changes to promote climate smart buildings and higher levels of green building design, maintaining and expanding the work of the Lowell's Energy Advocate to connect residents and small businesses with Mass Save, and initiating an engagement strategy for building owners, managers, and occupants to accelerate decarbonization of existing buildings. So those are the basic kind of objectives or actions underneath that goal 1 of achieving carbon neutrality. Secondary action is to invest in and promote adoption of clean energy sources by increasing total installed solar capacity by 50% versus an FY23 baseline, promoting education of community choice aggregation citywide, and exploring on-site power generation from city assets. Third action is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in transportation by expanding existing publicly accessible EV charging infrastructure to include locations beyond the downtown, making new construction EV ready, expanding municipal solar installations across school, parking, and municipal properties, and expanding EV fleet charging citywide, and ensuring safe and quality pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Second goal.
To save your voice, if we're just gonna read off, should we just read stuff to ourselves?
I mean, I think that would be ideal, but I'm not sure if the people that are online have access to it, so,
Okay,
yeah.
got
But,
it. We will read.
I mean, I'm all for saving my voice,
I want to
but,
save your voice because I know you have lots of things to
Yeah.
say, so that's why.
all right, goal 2, building resilience. Action number 1, build resilient districts and microgrids by ensuring an equitable process and outcomes for the Lowell Network Geothermal Pilot Project, including stakeholder engagement, reduced energy burdens, public health benefits, and community ownership, and expanding network geothermal in densely populated neighborhoods. Action number 2 is to implement recommendations set forth in the updated Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan and the Resilient Urban Master Plan and Urban Heat Island Assessment. Goal 3 is to promote the clean energy economy. Action 1, develop a clean energy workforce in the city by supporting the development of existing and new clean energy companies in the city and working with Mass CEC to design and coordinate a Lowell-specific program. And goal number 4 is energy equity, ensuring that decarbonization goals do not result in a disproportionate increase in energy burdens for our most vulnerable residents. Action number 1 is to reduce the energy burden and protect consumers from deceptive clean energy products by focusing on supporting residents that are vulnerable to energy burdens with resources such as information on the discount rates being available to income eligible residents. Assessing baseline levels of weatherization completed in qualified census tracts and recommend an action plan to increase participation. Maintain and expand work of the Energy Advocate for the city, connect residents with arrearage management and forgiveness plans, fuel assistance, community choice aggregation, and mass save programs. developing resources that educate, inform, and protect residents from deceptive marketing of renewables, including misleading and unsubstantiated, quote, green claims made by customer or by companies to their customers. So that's the broad landscape. And the way that we're approaching this, so the way that the master plan itself in the broad sense, because there are goals that go beyond obviously the energy, climate, and environment goals, and those goals are in other areas, but we expect this document to be a living document that'll be updated on a regular basis. I know that the city manager is committed to reporting out on these on a regular basis across the different departments. I also know that we're even aligning our internal kinds of processes. For example, our grants processes, we need to cite which portion of the master plan the grants that we're pursuing align with. And so I think it's a little bit different than what was done with the last master plan, which was more aspirational in nature, and this really has more quantified, smartized kind of goals based on input from the public in a robust engagement process. And with that, I would open up to questions.
I have a question. Of this master plan, is there anything that you think is missing?
So for the master plan itself, like I said, this was based primarily on public engagement within the city. And so there were a lot of different public forums where people could add different sticky notes and things like that. I do think that the objectives within the master plan are the right kind of overall goals. I think that, obviously this is a 20-year master plan, and I think that it would be difficult to create goals in 2024 for technologies that are not even present, because we always know that things are changing, that new technologies are coming online, that new opportunities are coming online. But I think that based on feedback from the public and based on the kind of vision that we have within the sustainability division, I do think that this is pretty comprehensive and really captures a lot of the work that we do and hope to do within our division.
That makes sense. Is there a process or mechanism by which this would be updated? Because a 25-year timeline, and I agree with what you said. Who knows what happens in 25 years? Things are moving fast, so it needs to be a.
Yeah, so from what my understanding is, and this is a little different process than they used previously, and when they previously went through the master plan process, I wasn't working with the city, but I think it is intended to be more of a living, breathing kind of document. So you have your overarching goals, but the specific objectives within them might change a little bit depending on what information is available to you, what technologies come online, and what kind of challenges you encounter. Because we might find that as we go, for example, to try and get baseline levels of weatherization within the city, I know that's going to require a lot of participation and cooperation from utilities that hold that data. We may not be able to access that data to get a true picture of things, but we might be able to come up with some proxy kinds of things where we can still make sure that on an annual basis we're increasing weatherization within the city and moving towards decarbonization. That's just one example. I'm sure that as technology advances and as the Commonwealth advances, there's probably going to be other kinds of changes that'll be made along the way.
Just adding on to that, is it, so when, as far as a regular basis goes, what is that sort of definition? Is that just that the goal is to update it as a general practice, or is it that there's a bi-year, 6-month check-in or 1-year check-in?
I don't have the answer to that question. I think I had envisioned in my mind it's probably more of an annual kind of update when the city manager gives his kind of update of the state of the city, or something to that effect. But I don't think, because this master plan is such a new product, it's only been finished this spring, I don't know that they have or outlined all of the mechanisms of how that is going to look and what that actual timeline is.
Yeah, so it's just not defined.
Not that not that anybody shared with me, but that's a question I can take back.
It's fine. It's fine. If it's not defined, it's not defined. Yeah.
Jay has his hand up, and I think Steve may have had his hand up. Can we adjust the view so
that we can see other people?
besides-
Stephen had his hand up first.
There we go. Okay, now we can see you.
Yeah, but Jay's much cuter than I am, so go ahead, Jay.
You're both
Both very cute.
Wow, flattery will get you everywhere.
All right, you too.
I understand mechanisms, and I understand living, breathing documents, and I do think that this is more quantified. It seems definitely less of an aspirational master plan. I'm really excited about it. I was wondering if the city has even a ballpark idea of when, for example, the climate action plan might be put together, because that is a huge tool that a number of other communities use effectively to guide and assist in the development of sustainable practices.
I think that was considered to be part of the short-term goals.
So a 0 to 5 year time span. And I think kind of the limiting factor there will be the ability to secure funding to do that kind of comprehensive analysis. We do have existing plans that have been created that could feed into that. For example, our municipal vulnerability preparedness plan has to do a lot with climate resilience. We do have plans to look at how do we get to where we want to be in terms of carbon neutrality. And I think a plan that comprehensive requires an identification of a funding source, which hasn't been identified yet. But I think that given the gravity of it, I think that that's something that we thought would be important to have in the 0 to 5 year range.
Doesn't that affect our bond rating
Thing, as a city,
We have to report on what we're doing around climate resilience every year as part of our bond reporting that we have. And we do provide those kinds of updates on an annual basis. But I don't believe that at this point any formal kind of structure beyond what we already have in terms of the municipal vulnerability preparedness plan has to be factored into the bond rating.
Steve's got his hand up. Cute Steve over there.
Well, I saw you were like sort of pondering what Catherine was just saying, so go ahead. Do you have anything you wanted to say?
no, you go ahead, and I'll think while you talk.
All right. So I think that the plan out to 2050, I think its priorities are right on target. So I wouldn't change a thing there. I think they're right. Everything's pointing in the right direction there. My comment here would be only that the time frame, and you alluded to this, Catherine, and it made a really good point that between now and 2050, we have no idea what the technology is going to look like. But what we do know is what the technology looks like now. And so my concern is, given that I think the priorities out to 2050 are exactly on target, the challenge that we face is the next 5 years out to 2030, because what we do on the ground here in the next 5 years is going to determine how successful we are in the long term. So, for instance, you mentioned that there's some text in this plan about EV charging, and I'm just using this as an example. How we, what happens on the ground in the next 5 years? We're going to decide now. So for instance, in the subcommittee meeting with the LRTA, with David Bradley, the most important thing that he said, I think, in that meeting was that if we start today, it's going to take 28 months to build up the infrastructure that we need to electrify the fleet. He's exactly correct. The problem is that we can't start today because we don't have those plans. We don't know. We can't say this is where we're going now. This is what we have to start building now. Just for instance, I'll just as another example, the Link project. That's a project that's going to be happening really soon, not built out 25 years. So we have to figure out now what we're going to do. How is that going to integrate with the infrastructure we have now in order to achieve what we need to achieve out to 2050? So I hope that was clear and not too long-winded.
I think the general point you're making is a good one, because you can just flip a switch and everything gets converted instantly. You have to build up the infrastructure for it. And I'll talk a little bit later about some of our grants that we've been working on around this. But the overall concept that we've developed as part of this is the acronym of RELIEF, which is reducing emissions in Lowell through infrastructure and efficiency first. And that I is the key piece that you're talking about here. How do we build the infrastructure to allow for this energy transition? What decisions are we making now that will get us on that glide path towards everything? Is that kind of what you're thinking? And just, yeah, okay.
So I have a question because I'm trying to understand a little bit. Where it says indicators of progress on the first page and talks about increasing publicly available EV charging infrastructure by 50% versus 23 baseline. Is that an increase of 50% by 2050?
I was going to ask that.
Or is that, and if that is so, and similar with the solar infrastructure, how do we know that's the right number? Do you feel like that's the right number? Is that feel like, because to me that feels like not a very large amount for the EVs, and for the solar that could be a very significant amount. So can you color on that?
I'd be happy to elaborate on that, and thank you for the question. So the idea behind the EV charging is we know that as the Commonwealth electrifies, as we move away from fossil fuels for our vehicles, our transportation, and things like that, we know there's going to be a need for publicly accessible charging. And that's what this specific metric has to do with. It has to do with publicly accessible charging. But we also know that a vast majority of people are probably, or maybe not, actually I think in Lowell even, I still think there are more people housed in single family homes versus multi-family buildings. And so we expect that it's not just going to be the city's infrastructure that people use to charge their vehicles. There are going to be private EV chargers. There are going to be people that charge at home. But we want to make sure, though, that as people are going to city assets and, visiting City Hall, for example, an EV charger outside here, we want to make sure that we're thinking strategically about this. And I think one of the other objectives a little further down, talked about expanding EV charging beyond the downtown, because the vast majority of our publicly accessible EV chargers are kind of in the downtown core, because that was sort of a historical legacy when National Grid first introduced their EV charging program. It's kind of like these were the easiest ones to hit. But we are looking at creating a more comprehensive strategy, and I think 50% is a good place to start. And I think that's the nice thing, again, about this being a living, breathing document, that if we hit these goals, there's nothing that says we can't go further. But, you know, these are the things we want to, at minimum, make sure that we're hitting these goals. Same thing on solar. So solar, that particular metric has to do with the broader installed capacity across the city. So this includes residents that have solar. This includes municipal properties. This includes commercial properties, institutional properties. And we have a pretty good proxy for all of those. Right now, Lowell has about 21 megawatts of installed capacity. And so a 50% increase would be another 10 megawatts of capacity, which would be quite significant for a city this size. And so I think, again, that's probably a good place, a good aspirational goal. But if we surpass that, I think that that's something that we can always modify the goals as we go along. And like I said, you know, with a 20-year master plan, it's hard to tell what kind of wonderful technologies, maybe even UMass Lowell, my alma mater, comes up with that will help enable this and make it more economic, more efficient, more flexible to meet the needs of the future. So I hope that that provides some insight into this.
So it is 2050 by 2050.
So 2050 is the goal that's in this, but this is a 20-year master plan. So we're seeing the master plan itself going through 2045. It's
Okay.
nice and confusing.
So
Yeah.
I think what we're all sort of getting at is that it would be, I'm sure you have, and, you know, as someone that has this, you know, job that feeds into this, you know, 20-year master plan. I mean, in 20 years, I'll almost be like retiring age, right? Like, we're all sitting here now. Is there something like nearer term that you have that you'd like to focus on in the next 3 and 5 years that feeds into like your own sort of like subset of these goals of like, okay, increase solar infrastructure by 50% versus FY23 baseline. I want to get there in X amount of years, or other main points of this plan that you have a shorter time horizon on?
Yeah, so I think the shorter time horizons are this kind of updates that I give you guys on a monthly basis in terms of what we're doing around the city, around energy efficiency, the types of grants that we're applying for to try and help, you know, secure funding to pursue these goals, the types of, you know, additional solar that we've gotten additional permissions to interconnect on and things like that. So right now, for example, we have permission to interconnect at facilities where we anticipate having new solar-ready roofs. We are in the process right now of trying to get all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. A number of these roof structures are going on through our Massachusetts School Building Association funded projects through their accelerated repair program. Those are going on as we speak. They've already begun the projects this summer. We anticipate those will be onboarded by the fall, and that we can go behind with the solar, which will almost double our behind the meter solar capacity, because we just got 2 new interconnection agreements since the last meeting.
So how does that translate to, so that's not exactly what I'm asking. What I'm asking is 5-year goals for certain things. Like, what are your what are your like 5-year goals? Like, what do we absolutely need to do, in your opinion, that you have for goals? Like, I need to make sure that this happens in Lowell in 5 years.
I think it's a different philosophy. I think it sounds like the goal is to do the best you can. And
Well,
that
this
This is an ongoing project, right? And that's why
I
they're
mean,
all
I
labeled
think
as
I think
near-term,
the
medium-term.
idea is continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So every single month, we're bringing new energy efficiency projects online in the city to try and make our carbon footprint smaller. Every single month, our energy advocate is helping people that have never connected with the Mass Save program to get enrolled in the Mass Save program. Every single month, we're advancing our solar objectives. Every single month, we're trying to make progress on this, and that's why I want to provide you guys with these kinds of updates that we talk about every single month. And I think as you do that, I think that you do continue to move the needle. Now, am I going to assess our carbon footprint every single month? No, I think it makes more sense to look at emissions, energy use, reductions, and things like that on an annual basis, which I also have provided, to this group before. And I know that the city manager also reports on those metrics on an annual basis. They're also included in the annual budget report. So I think those kinds of things, it's what I get up every day and do when I walk to work every day. Every day I'm thinking about how can we improve Lowell, and not only improve Lowell, but make us an example of what's possible. And I think if you look at our track record, we've been able to accomplish a lot. And I think that's one of the reasons that over the past year, we've received recognition from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, from Mass Inc., from the sponsors of Mass Save, from the Solar Energy Business Alliance of New England, because we are actually doing things, and it's not just an aspirational type of thing. But like everything else, I can't do things without funding to have that. And so that's one of the reasons that we put a lot of emphasis on writing grants and going for every single dollar that is out there and leveraging every utility incentive that we can get. And so I guess I have a different perspective than it sounds like you might have, but I think that we are making progress, and it's a tangible progress that can be tracked. So
Yeah, no, without question, we're making progress. This is a lot of stuff. So I guess it's just, maybe it is a different philosophy where it's it's great to have a near-term point that you're aspiring to so that you can measure better rather than a 20-year out point.
I guess
I think it's just two different philosophies. I think it's,
Yeah.
it sounds like, there's a philosophy of having an aspirational goal and trying to have your team meet it and have it be an exciting thing, versus a sort of, slow and steady approach of let's try to get better every day, and let's try to get the things that we can get. Which I think it's just.
Well, I think the things we're getting are demonstrable things that feed into the Smartize goal that are part of the master plan, and we'll be updating on a regular basis. But I'm not sure how to.
I'm not saying it. I don't mean to say it. I'm not trying to say it in a bad way. I think it's just two different approaches.
And to me, sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, one thing I did want to, I think it would be a really great topic of discussion, as well as something that we could potentially promote, the Sustainability Council could promote, is digging deeper into the plan for these solar ready buildings, because that is a tangible thing that can be understood by the general public of these are things that the city is doing. This is that building that you see that we're trying to, improve. And I think that as far as that's an aspect of what the Sustainability Council should be helping also do, is promote things that the city is working on that maybe not everybody knows is being worked on. And so I think maybe if I could get a second to at some point, it doesn't have to be next month but at some point to maybe have you present on that's specific project for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a super intense, but it'd be interesting to hear more about how the city goes about trying to initiate these big lofty goals in a tangible way.
So can I just clarify?
Yeah.
So just trying to wrap my mind around providing you the information that you're looking to get beyond the information that's already provided to you. It sounds like you might be saying it's nice to have these smartized, lofty, long-term goals. You want to know what are our goals in the shorter term. I explained some of those and said that they're provided in the monthly updates, but I think you're saying it would be more helpful to leave more time in the meetings to kind of discuss, for example, what the city is doing around our solar portfolio, what the limitations.
Just specific highlight projects that like we could actually kind of like talk about and because you know, the Sustainability Council, an arm about it is like outreach, and I think like, you know, like our Facebook page or whatever is a tool that we can try and grasp on to projects that the city is working on that we can highlight to, and then, you know, it keeps the city like kind of engaged, right? Because it's like, or the not the city, but the residents of the city, you know, engaged, and where it's like tangible things like, oh, I know that building, you know, and if, you know, I mean, we, and like maybe there are specific projects that maybe that you might be like, hey, by the way, I think that this one might be a good one for you guys to potentially highlight and dig into, because we can't, like, you know, we're volunteers, we can't be researching all of these grants that are a potential. So
Can I say that I think the dots that
Sure,
you're
yeah,
asking
yeah.
to be connected, like a great example of this was last meeting when we had Liz Altman come and talk about here's what we're doing with bicycle infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, like how we're addressing this particular thing. And if you look at this goals document, it's like, this is
vague.
there's a lot, like it's action 3.4, ensure safe and quality pedestrian and bike infrastructure. So she put a bunch of detail on that and said, like, here's what we're doing.
That actually means something.
And so I was like, okay, great. Like, I think that's that for at least the people in this room and whoever's reading the minutes, et cetera, like that was really helpful
Totally.
to understand a little bit more about like what's going on and how we can take actionable steps to help that next week, tomorrow. You know, like what can I do? How can I interact with her to make it feel like I can make a difference? So like, I think maybe like most of the conversation that we're having is very kind of high level, broad reaching, long term, like, and
We're like super duper
long,
specific, like,
yeah.
really be letting
And
it
so,
go.
and so I think it's nice to kind of like, for what you're saying, maybe is, can we get to that level of detail every now and then on maybe like, let's check in. I'm just going to throw a random one out there on, we don't have to do this, but like building capacity within the sustainability division. How's that going? Like maybe we could talk about your staffing structure at some point. Is that what you're trying to ask, Cormac?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe unless people had other specific questions. Oh, sorry.
See you, Steve. Okay, sorry.
And his cat too.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, me?
Did you have a comment based on that?
I did. I just wanted to say that, the agenda item before you is the Lowell Forward Master Plan, which is an overview of where we're going out to 2050. And all the comments, including mine, were questions about, what do we do tomorrow? And I don't think, it's what we do tomorrow was really, really hard to figure out. It's just to refer again to Tuesday's subcommittee meeting with Director Bradley of the LRGA, is like, his question was, well, this new technology is taller than the buses we have now. So we have a bridge problem. So all I'm trying to say here is that what we do tomorrow is really hard to figure out. And the agenda item before you was is the master plan up to 2050. And I think those goals are directly on target. What we do tomorrow is another issue. Really hard to answer. I'm sorry.
So the only thing I was going to suggest, and I don't know if this helps bridge
the gap, and maybe it's something that there's some kind of disconnect in here, but on a monthly basis, and it's actually the next agenda item, is the grant and sustainability division updates. And so maybe it makes more sense on a monthly basis to kind of go into more detail about those kind of things. I don't know, but
Or maybe just
this-
like one of them, you know, instead of like the overview thing, because like, you know, like, yeah, like if there was like one that seems extra interesting, right?
Well-
That's like, you know, potentially a more promising one, right? Because, you know, essentially, I don't know what your rate is, but oftentimes it's like you get 40% of grants that you apply to, right?
my rate's probably higher.
Huh?
My rate's probably higher.
Sure, but like
yeah.
on the average, that's like what the rule of thumb is.
But
A lot of these updates are pretty like iterative, so we see like very similar updates every month. So I think what would be great is, and it's good to have these metrics every month, but would be great is like maybe hone in on one solar development or, you know, energy efficiency projects. Let's take that one. This is what we've done in the last, you know, year, the last month, whatever it is. But this is what the like 3-year strategic plan is for where we want to go in the city.
so if we want to transition to that item, I'm happy to speak more to that, and I can go in more depth and not summarize everything that we're doing in all of our different grants, but I can highlight probably 3 specific areas within the last month that may give you a flavor of what you're looking for, but I just want to make sure there weren't any more questions or comments on the master plan piece of it.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing I was kind of looking at the master plan is that it's not, yeah, it almost seems like it could get copied and pasted into any city in the state, and so it's kind of,
Well, I think a lot of the concerns that Lowellians have are similar to concerns that other people within the state and other cities have as well. So I think that makes a
Yeah,
lot of
I know.
sense. But
yeah. I mean, that's sort of why it's like, it'd be nice to kind of like dig into like, you know,
well, let's dig in then.
so like you said, that's
Yeah.
those next few grants.
So for the grants table, I won't go into depth about a lot of the things that have changed, but I know you want more information on kind of what we're doing. And so I can talk about,
Or like the ones that are like, you know, highlights that are exciting for you kind of deal, you know?
I can talk about the federal grants that we put in over the last month and some of the grant funding that we've started expending in the city. So we can start with the federal grants. So one of the grants that we applied for at the end of May, so after your monthly meeting, before this monthly meeting, was the Seasite grant. It's the Community Sparking Innovation and Transformational Energy. And so the idea behind that, it's a DOE grant. We applied for about $3.1 million. And what we wanted to do in that particular grant is they wanted to find ways to utilize things that have been identified as needs in the community as a way of sparking additional kinds of investments in Lowell. We know that Lowell has historically been underserved by the Mass Save program. That's one of the reasons that the sponsors of Mass Save created seed funding to have energy advocates within your community. So the approach that we took in this particular grant, again, using our reducing emissions Lowell through infrastructure and efficiency first, is we wanted to spread that kind of relief across the community by doing energy efficiency projects in public-facing buildings, documenting that process. And as you are actually looking at these little, whether it's a kiosk or a poster that's near areas where work is being done, to kind of make the invisible visible, but also say to residents that you can do this in your home too, and then have a direct link to our energy advocate and his work. So the idea would be that by doing and promoting the work we're doing around energy efficiency in places like City Hall, the library, the area where our police station and fire station are located, the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, that you'll have a lot of people that might see something and they might not have thought about doing the same kind of work in their home. But when they see that in a public place, they see the city's doing that. First of all, it shows the city's actually doing things to try and make their facilities better. And it shows that they can do the same with theirs by having that direct link to our energy advocates. So the hope is to do energy efficiency in city buildings and leverage that to be able to do efficiency in more homes across Lowell. So that was the $3.1 million grant that we applied for. We also just,
Could I?
What is the direct link? When you say direct link to energy?
yeah, so through our kiosks and our informational kinds of things, you would actually have Victor's number there. You would have a place where if you had a smartphone, you could take a QR code and that can send directly to the Community First Partnership website. We'd have his cards available for people. So just a way to make energy efficiency, which a lot of people they don't put as much emphasis on energy efficiency as they do solar, because you can see solar panels. You're not always going to see the building envelope work that is done, or you might notice something different about the lights, but you might not recognize that that difference is the difference about converting to LED, or you might not recognize that a control system was upgraded, but that's going to increase the efficiency that you have with ability and the comfort as well. These are things that you can't normally see, and they're things, though, that can not only improve the quality of the experience in our public buildings, but as people do that in their homes, it can improve the comfort of their homes, it can improve their bottom line, and it's just another avenue for us to be able to get that word out there. So that's kind of the idea behind what we applied for in that particular grant.
Yeah, sorry, it'd be helpful if we stopped in between just because my memory is not the best, and so it's going to be difficult to.
Part of this is giving feedback where we can, and if it's just one long, it's hard for us to remember to give.
Sure. So, can you say what ECM is?
Energy conservation measure. Thank you. I'm very bad about using acronyms.
And so, is this doing any? Does the 3.1 million include actual projects, or is it just the marketing kit?
No, it includes actual
Cool.
projects.
Cool.
It would be LED lighting at City Hall, the library, JFK. It would be pipe insulation at City Hall, weatherization at Lowell Memorial Auditorium, control work at Lowell Memorial Auditorium, and an HVAC work there.
That makes a lot more sense. All right.
Sorry.
That sounds like a cool project.
So this feeds, just to tie it together, this feeds into the goal, oh, sorry, thank you. This feeds into the overall goal of energy efficiency, achieving, reducing energy consumption. So
Well, it hits on a few of them. So,
Yeah, it does. So
it's like building resilience, promote clean energy economy. It's so.
Does this
yeah.
touch the clean energy workforce in the city, building any of that, or is it just specific?
That doesn't necessarily have a direct connection to that, or at least not the way that I envisioned that particular piece of it working. But I think, I just saw earlier this week that there is additional funding coming out from Mass CEC to more directly, or at least they're going for federal funding to more directly tie this. So that could be kind of a separate sort of initiative. Of course, within any of our projects, we want to make sure that we are trying to ensure that our workforce is well compensated with prevailing wages, making sure that there are pathways to the contractors we work with for growth within the employment sector, trying to really encourage local workforce hiring where possible and different things like that. But I think the more direct link that's envisioned in the master plan around the clean energy workforce is a separate kind of program and grant. Good questions.
Yeah, sounds like a cool. I think I feel like I've seen it's definitely a helpful thing to have outward public facing things that when people are walking by, they're like, oh, the city's doing cool stuff.
I
Versus
previously
big
worked in
construction.
a building like that, and it had a little, there's a placard on just about every feature that they could highlight. And it was really cool to work and live and just be in that. I was an employee in that building for 3 years, and I learned a ton from the other employees, but also just from reading the things in the building and existing in that space. So it's
Cool.
I vote for that. Good.
I think another big grant that we just finished in the last month, unless there are other questions on Seasite.
I think we can move. Yeah, I don't see any hands.
The other big grant that we applied for with the school department was the Renew America Schools grant, and they restructured this grant a little bit from last year. So the total value, if we were successful in this grant, would be about $15.3 million, but it's kind of done more in phases. So the first phase is just a prize competition that allows you, once you get that phase, to enter into the deeper negotiations. That first phase is $300,000, and what you need to show as part of the grant that we included in our application is that your buildings have needs for upgrades, and that you are really you have a plan to be able to complete comprehensive building assessments, and that you have a plan to look at across your portfolio and find and prioritize opportunities within that. So you had to have a minimum of 10 facilities in order to be able to be a part of this prize. The first stage of this prize is $300,000. You could have 20 plus buildings. We entered 23 buildings into the assessment. And if you get that prize,
That's good. We got plenty.
we got plenty. We got plenty of needs, plenty of buildings. But so then once if you are selected for that first phase of prize, then you get to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Department of Energy. And that takes you to the second phase, where you could get up to $1 million to do ASHRAE level 2 energy audits of your facilities. And so you had to have a plan in place. How would you go about doing that? What kinds of things would you be looking at? Who would you bring on board to accomplish these kinds of things? Once you identify those, that'll help to say, you need to do this measure at this building, this measure at this building, this measure here. And then once you've completed that, you can go to the third phase, which is implementation, which is another $14 million. So it could be up to $15 million. And that one was one we just turned in, I believe, on the 13th.
Cool.
And so we've been applying for a lot of these grants. We expect to hear back about some of them over kind of the next 3 to 4 months. And I think we can, depending on what we're funded as part of, we can move forward with that. But the idea was to try and find the right grant for the right purpose, but to all keep it moving towards, creating solar enabling infrastructure, doing energy efficiency, having these benefits flow not only directly to our facilities, but to the community as well. And so we're very excited about the Renew America Schools grant as well. And I think we should know more in a few months.
Cool. Yeah, that's definitely a great. One other question is.
Can I ask one question? Are you asking about the?
What is it? Yeah. Is it focused on, like, renewable or like energy efficient buildings, or is it like in making them more sustainable, or is it focused more on like bringing their maintenance up to par, I guess?
Excellent question. I think it can include both of those things. I think the ASHRAE level 2 audits that they're doing, those will identify what kinds of things you need to do to make it more efficient and more sustainable. But as a requirement, as part of that, part of what you have to incorporate into that is also how are you going to take care of this in the long term? And I think that that's one of the things that we really want to make sure that as we're going forward, we want to equip our employees to not only take care of the infrastructure we have now, but to be able to proactively maintain it along the way. And as we start to look into decarbonization opportunities, I think that need only increases. So I think having in the very beginning, as you're starting these kinds of things and as you're doing these kinds of audits, having that kind of embedded into it, I think is going to be a key to success.
Yeah, so I guess just to follow it, are we going to be doing something like we did with the like the high school where we end up doing natural gas heating and cooling, or is the purpose of this to be going towards electric?
Well, I think with the high school in particular, that was of the school
we don't have to
building
get into
committee.
that,
So,
but just
you know,
as far as,
that's it's a little different, but I think it's a different landscape than it was when those decisions were made. I think
it will be kind of more focused on the electric.
I think what we're looking to do is to assess through these types of ASHRAE audits, not only opportunities for the energy efficiency, which are really enabling technologies to allow for greater electrification. Because, for example, we've had a high-level feasibility study done for one of our middle schools to see what it would look like, what at high level it would cost to electrify there. But because we've done so much energy efficiency work, the feasibility study has indicated that we wouldn't need significant electrical upgrades. They actually said no electrical upgrades would be needed. So I think these all kind of fit into one another. And I think that would be a piece of what we would be looking at in the analysis, in the ASHRAE level audits. Of course, you know, the actual decisions, I think, will be based on the totality of what the needs are that are identified and things like that. But I think whatever work we do, it's going to get us on that pathway.
Cool.
So.
That school that you mentioned, that's one of the ones that you identified for this, or is that one that's ongoing right now?
It's one of the 23 schools.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And this would cover all 23?
Yes, so if we're successful, we would be able to audit all 23 schools. So it's basically most of our portfolio.
That'd be cool.
The only ones that were excluded were the high school, only because it's going through a massive renovation right now anyway.
You just pull out the natural gas stuff and put electric stuff in with it.
And,
Okay.
Preschools weren't eligible, so the preschool that we have, the early education center, wasn't included. And then there were a couple of buildings that the school department is not sure if they're going to continue to remain in the portfolio, and you needed to have that commitment. And so, but the rest of our schools, we entered into this.
So I guess one question is there anything we can do to help? All right. Yeah, you go ahead.
Is this something that the city's prepared to foot the bill for, regardless of whether or not we get the grant?
I don't think that this level, I don't think that ASHRAE level 2 energy audits with all of the other kinds of capital needs within the city. And that was one of the things that we actually put in the grant. It's kind of like you had to show that you had need. And that's not a hard thing for Lowell, because we had comprehensive facility condition assessments done, I think, around 2019. And at that time, there were over $100 million in identified capital needs across our school portfolio for over a 10-year period. But what we found is that as you start picking off some of those things, that the actual costs in $2024 or $2023 or 2022, basically, a lot of things have changed since COVID. The actual need is about 3 times that. And then when you look, because the city maintains the school buildings, owns the school buildings. So it's not just the needs of the schools that we need to think about, but the broader capital needs across the city. And so I think that the scope of the needs is so massive that if we don't find outside funding sources, it would be very hard to commit to doing that. And so,
So what would we do if we don't get the grant, is what I'm asking.
I think we would just struggle to run the schools, right?
we continue moving forward. We continue looking for opportunities with our,
Plan, if we don't
well,
get
I mean, you know, you always look for opportunities to fund different things. You may not be successful in this grant. You may be able to take that idea and put it in another grant. There may be, we're in the middle of, we're actually pretty advanced in the next 3-year plan for the energy efficiency plan for the sponsors of Mass Save and the program administrators. There will be different kinds of incentives that are available there. The same kind of incentives that we're taking advantage of in the current 3-year plan. There will be additional opportunities, not just with federal funding. We know the state is also very invested and very committed in moving in this direction. So we would keep our eyes out for state funds. And, you know, and then if all of that dries up, we might even start looking into foundations. But I think you have to have the vision of where you're going, which is what we kind of discussed through the master plan efforts. And then you do everything that you can to implement that vision. You make progress all the time. But I think it would be irresponsible of me to say that the city is going to come up with $15 million to implement a plan that you could implement through this grant funding when there are so many other needs within the city. And there's, of course, a process like that. Like there's a process with everything in the city. And so, but, you know, we still want to move in this direction and we're still making very good progress. And I think the fact that the feasibility study that we did at that middle school, because we had done so much for energy efficiency there, and the fascinating thing about that particular example as well is it's one of the additional facilities that we're looking to develop solar in. And according to this feasibility study, that if we developed our solar there, it would actually offset, the production of the solar would offset the increases in electricity from electrifying our heating sources. And so that's the kind of model we want to find and move towards. Of course, we know MSBA will be revamping their systems. They're going to be looking at piloting and creating new things. They're no longer going to incentivize the natural gas boilers. So, of course, we would be pursuing all of the above types of solutions, all of the above types of funding sources to get us where we need to be. So we don't have to rely on, if we don't get this grant, that we're not going to move forward. We will, but it might be at a different pace and a different scale, but we're always going to keep moving forward.
So it sounds like this grant, but there's roughly, like you said, there's something like $300 million that's needed to get the schools into good shape. And so it sounds like this 15 million, some might go towards sustainability, electrification stuff, but it's the main focus is to get the schools in good shape.
Well, the main focus of this particular grant is to get the buildings in good shape through energy efficiency, decarbonization, and things like that. Yeah. Sorry, I probably wasn't clear. The broader needs are much bigger than just energy efficiency, but we believe that by investing in these types of things, though, that we will get more functional schools, that we will have more, you know, that we'll have better outcomes for all of those students that we serve in our system.
You just want the city to spend more money on getting things going.
No, I mean,
You're not satisfied with there not being a good plan?
No, there just has to be like we have like.
Not had nothing to do with you. It's just that there's that the mountain to climb is so massive and that there's not a plan.
I'm curious what the 5-year plan is for schools that have the most immediate need, and like what sort of funding we can go after in the next 2-3 years. Like you said, there's a 3-year.
That's kind of what this is.
Mass Save, plan. So being more clear on like the nearer term opportunities and the funding that's needed in the nearer term for like the more like emergency schools or the lowest hanging fruit for energy efficiency, stuff like that, to kind of like weave it all together, and have it be like maybe like a bigger picture, just schools, just energy efficiency, like this has to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, and these are the funding opportunities that we see as of available like right now for us.
Well, I think the challenge is that some of the funding sources, like for example, we know that the MSBA is revamping their accelerated repair program on the heating side. We know that they will no longer be doing gas boilers. What we do not know is we do not know what the new program will fund. For example, if it's going to fund, it will be funding some type of electrification for replacing end-of-life fossil fuel equipment. We don't know if that includes the different kinds of things that you might need to go in that direction, the electrical upgrades, the balance of system, the energy efficiency. And that's why, you know, we have a big picture idea of these are the places that we've done X, Y, and Z measures. We haven't done them here. We need to still do these here. Maybe we can put this grant to get that particular need, that grant to do that particular need, utilize utility funding and mechanisms to do that. I think you move towards all of that simultaneously, but it's hard to commit to saying we will apply for Renew America Schools this year, and if we don't get it this year, we're going to apply next year, because we don't know if the funding will be there next year. We can apply for MSBA this year, but we don't know if we'll get in there next year, because each grant has its own kind of, you know, things that it requires you to do and different competitive criteria, and those are all very subjective. But I think the main point that we have is moving forward with all of the above solutions, with all of the above funding sources to get us to where we need to be.
Thanks, Steve.
Oh, could I just, on that, do any of these, just out of curiosity, do any of these have on-site storage?
That was something we looked at in another grant. We weren't able to advance that grant. We did not get an encourage on our concept paper, but it is something where we're still looking at with our solar developer, because they also do energy storage. The challenge with storage is just the economics of it.
Right.
You know, that it doesn't.
There's not yet state incentives significant enough to
Right.
pay itself back in 3 years.
But we're always looking at all of the above
Curious, just
solutions.
'cause that example of that school that you were saying that it was, if the solar was on there, that it would offset your
Increased electricity use from electrifying your heating source.
I thought you were saying that it, or maybe I heard you wrong. I thought that you had said that it would that you wouldn't need to make the electrical upgrade
That's correct.
because of the solar.
It's not because of the solar. We wouldn't
No,
we wouldn't need to make the electrical upgrades because of all the efficiency we've done there. You know,
okay.
the school has been designed to handle a certain load. Because we've reduced that load so much, it can still take on electrification
Yep.
and not have increased load. But the increased electricity usage could be offset by the solar.
Thanks, yeah. But the tonnage of the HVAC equipment wouldn't be as much because of the insulation
Right.
and windows and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool, thanks.
Steve has his hand up.
Sorry, Steve.
Oh, no. So there was something that Catherine mentioned a few minutes ago, that I've forgotten what spurred me to bring this up. But one of the things that I've noticed from my perspective, which is, you know, the information that I look at is very different than the information that Catherine looks at. But what has really astonished me over the last year was the amount of money both offered and immediately taken up in school bus electrification. It's far surpassed what the RTAs have, what the public transit system has done. And it's really been astonishing. There've been some really great great things that have emerged out of that, including vehicle to grid installations that are actually being deployed now. So what really astonished me was, the amount of opportunity there was in the school bus fleet, which is a kind of a uniquely American thing, but nevertheless. The other thing that I've noticed, and this has been actually documented in the press, is that more affluent communities have been able to take advantage of the grant opportunities in this sector than less advantaged. And I mean, it's been documented that more money is in this area is going to more affluent communities. And I hate to pick on our friends in Andover once again, but it is in fact true that they got a significant grant for conversion of their school bus fleet to electric. And so I'm just wondering if you could comment on that trend or tendency.
I'd be happy to comment on that. I know that
There are a lot of grants that are available for school bus electrification. I think two of the challenges that we have in Lowell in terms of that is that we don't actually own our bus fleet. And I know that there are grants out there that are available even if you lease your bus fleet. But I think that requires cooperation and participation from a third party. And I think that is one challenge. I think another challenge, or maybe it's not a challenge, but a consideration, is there are only so many hours in the day. And when I'm looking at the comprehensive suite of projects that we have and what's really going to reduce our emissions on both the municipal and the citywide level, the vast majority of our emissions, 60+% come from our buildings. And so that's where I tend to spend most of my time. And I think as there are opportunities for vehicles, for EV charging, for those types of things, yes, of course, if we have more things that are within our control, we're probably more likely to go towards those types of things. I don't know what the percentage breakdown is in Andover of their overall emissions and their overall energy. And it might be that a higher percentage of their emissions comes from vehicles. But in a city like Lowell, that's not where most of ours come from.
Right. I mean, I would put it down to the fact that municipalities like Andover have more resources at their disposal to garner these extra funds, and that's
there's definitely that piece too. The only thing I would point out really quickly is we're about 5 minutes out, and we've only gotten through essentially 2 of the agenda items. No, I am very happy to have this conversation. I think this is fantastic, but I just wanted to point that out. We can continue talking about some of these challenges. We can put more of these things.
Hand up, so I just wanted to see if she wanted to say anything
Before we move on.
No, it wasn't that important. It was just a question to Steve whether that was a national statistic that he cited or if it was local.
No, and please forgive me, I can't cite it, off the top of my head, but it was in either Boston Globe or New York Times, or that was not a national number. But
okay, all right. I didn't want to take us down.
My guess is that, it just makes sense. Right? It just makes sense that municipalities that have the resources to invest in staffing and things like that are more likely to be successful. It's just, that's not a criticism of anybody. It's just makes sense, right?
All right.
Definitely. Recycling update, I think, was very quick. There was no monthly meeting, right? And I think we were supposed to, like, the recycling committee.
I think Jay has formally set a meeting. We're gonna have it on is it the 10th, July 10th? Oh, you're muted.
Yes,
But,
it is.
We're gonna have
July
our formal
10th
meeting.
at 2:00 at the DPW office with Chris Sullivan, or on Teams. Chris said he would send out a Teams invite, but I'm hoping to show up face to face.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to show up face to face, but that's it. No update until next month when we have our meeting.
Okay, great.
Fast round of all these other things. The semi-annual meetings with the city manager's office, I believe that our time has been set up for July 16th.
Oh, wow, that's soon.
Yeah, it is soon. So
Is it during, I assume it's during the workday, probably, right?
was it, do you know what time it was?
I can't remember. I want to say it was definitely during the workday, but I can't remember what the exact time was. I think I put it in the email to the group.
Okay. So group, check your email. Is it appropriate for like whatever?
I don't think you definitely can't run afoul of open meeting law, so I think it might be more helpful for you to decide who should be present at that meeting as a discussion of the body in the next 3 minutes.
Okay.
Unless you want to work after 8, so that's up to you.
We don't want to do that to you, and I don't want to do that to anyone else. So, we don't know what time it was. Okay. So, does anyone have any interest in coming to the meeting with the city manager, which is really fun, and we get to talk about things?
Yeah.
You're interested?
Is it just like an overall general meeting, or is there a specific?
It's kind of
Do we
like-
have an agenda for it? Is there?
I think we'll probably put something together, a rough, idea of things topics to discuss.
But as of now, there's not.
Right. Well, we don't even know what time it is.
What date is the 16th?
The 16th is on
where?
a Tuesday.
I might be able to go, but it depends.
Okay. Is this something we can figure out via email? Is that okay, Catherine?
I think
Kayla?
Yes, Jay.
Yeah, if I could offer a word of experience from the manager meetings that I've participated in.
Please.
This is an opportunity to report on progress and goals and accomplishments and share those directly with the manager. We publish that information on a yearly basis to the city council, but this is a great opportunity to collaborate and learn what's important to the manager and work as collaboratively as possible with the head of our city, the acting head, who reports to the city council. And, it's a great relationship building experience. If you're on the council and have a chance to make it, you can learn firsthand what the manager thinks about sustainability and the things that we are all working and fighting for, and get your thoughts on the table.
10 a.m. on the 16th.
Okay.
And that's before our next meeting,
Yep.
so seems like
Who's
we have some
coming?
preparation to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's like preparation. It's really just like, it's like Jay said, like good relationship building.
Okay. Yeah, I'll come.
Yeah. All right.
Just put it on the calendar.
Okay.
Cool.
So it seems like the three of
Yeah.
us can go, and we'll do an alternate for whoever else wants
Yeah.
to go.
AC, is it okay if you're an alternate? Yeah. Okay.
Is there a limit to how many of us can go?
Yeah,
or-
there's-
Yeah.
Violate open meeting law.
Oh, right.
Four-
So
four-
if somebody would, I'd gladly step aside and let someone else who's been on the council longer, if they would like to go, but I'm happy to go.
All right.
All right.
You and AC need to do
We'll
one
we'll sort the rest out over email. But it's good. Love the interest. so.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would caution you against with email is, again, if you're kind of like collaborating to put things together and make decisions, that's something that was discussed in a public forum, it might run up
Who
against,
comes to a
yeah.
meeting?
No, not who comes
Right,
to a
that's
meeting,
all
what
we'll
you're
talk
going to
about.
discuss.
Yeah,
is-
no, we
yeah,
won't,
yeah,
we won't say
yeah.
anything about what we'll discuss, just who's gonna be there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Duly noted. Awesome, thanks.
And I'm happy to just have you tell us who's gonna show up and why.
All righty. I want everybody to come.
Yeah, that's also another option.
No. And then that.
Leader.
All right, so climate-friendly pavement advocacy letter. AC, I'm gonna text you about that. We're gonna work together on that for the next meeting at some point.
Yes, okay.
Thanks, sorry. Cooling centers, I think we'll skip, because I think no progress has been made there, but it's gonna be hot. Good luck, everybody. Solar update on the high school. I think that was just really quickly, Jay had an update because he was at that building
Well,
planning.
I was going to say, there is no real update other than what we provided you last week, but I know that Jay did affirm in that meeting, because I watched the meeting, that what I had told you in the last meeting, that we are still waiting to hear about the impact study from National Grid. Our contractor has been working closely with the OPM team at the high school so that we can seamlessly go in behind them with solar and get those panels up there. But the building has to be completed with the construction. It has to be turned over to the city. We're still waiting on National Grid because it's an impact study. We anticipate any day now that we should be able to hear, that we'd be able to move forward, and we can move to interconnection. So, same update as last month.
So, is solar getting put on, or it's tentative?
No, it's getting put on. It's just a matter of what the timing of it, yeah, because you still have to go through National Grid's queue, and we don't have permission to interconnect yet. It went in what's called an impact study, so National Grid has X number of days to get back to you on whether that will affect their system and how, and if there's a financial cost to that.
So it's like 3 months from now or 9 months from now?
Well, we've been in the impact study queue for a while, so we anticipate we should hear within the next month or so. We thought that last month too, but National Grid's slow, and you can't force them to be faster.
And thanks, Steve. We'll we'll circulate a draft of the letter. I think for the climate-friendly asphalt letter, we'll probably vote on it the next meeting. I think the process is, and then we'll circulate it for 350 to sign on if they like it. And if you have anything you want us to put into it, let us know. Nice. It's 8:03. Upcoming events. I got
8:04
8:04.
is an upcoming event. Sorry, it was a joke.
That-
Go on.
As long as we're all still here, we don't know. It might may or may not be. Who knows?
I gotta laugh at a cat. It's good.
And yeah, watch that
Young kids wouldn't
YouTube
laugh at that, but,
link
you know,
that
it's old.
Jay sent
Love it.
for the LRTA meeting, and I'll include that in my follow-up email to everyone. Because we want to see what the LRTA is up to.
It's awesome.
Well, there you
go.
You're gonna get tired of seeing electric school buses, Steve, one day.
Yeah. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
There's gonna be so many of them. Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you
Good
too.
night. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, Jay.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Cynthia.
Mhm.